Welcome to another episode of the CPGGUYS podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPGGUYS.
Hi, folks, and welcome to this episode of the CPGGUYS podcast, where we explore the omnichannel digital journey of brands and retailers. I'm, of course, your co-host, Sri. Listen to my daughter's music at www.riaraj.com. That's www.rhearaj.com, and follow the exciting adventures of my younger daughter at Dream Academy by Universal Music on YouTube or Instagram. Joining me today is none other than my co-host and friend, aka the data and loyalty guru, also the partnership acceleration lead at none other than Flywheel Digital, Mr. PVS Bond. At the time of this recording, you happen to be in LA. What's going on?
Here I am. Well, we're doing a couple of things. It's good to be here, first of all, in person. We missed each other at grocery shop. You were flying out. I was flying in. I tried to wave to you from the plane. I don't think you saw me.
I waved back. I think
you
it's
did?
the contrary. You didn't look.
Okay, I didn't look close enough. I didn't have my glasses on, probably. But no, we're here. We're going to watch a little baseball tomorrow at Chavez Ravine, playoffs for the Dodgers, and doing a little strategery work as we think about where we're taking the podcast in 2024. It's just good to be out in beautiful, beautiful Southern California, very sunny. Unlike most of the other times this year, it seemed when I came out, there was like a flood or a hurricane or an earthquake, all sorts of things.
It's actually 97 and it's super hot.
It is. It's not too bad. So it's good to be here with you, Sri.
I don't know if the weather is in the best case scenario, but we can use the pool, which you and I have been waiting all day.
I got my Dodger swim trunks with me, so I'm ready to go.
There we go. So before we get to our guests, let me remind everyone to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. If you use Apple or Spotify, please do give us a rating because it helps feed the algorithm and makes our podcast much more findable, just like SEO works. And of course, when you give us a rating and a review, we also know if we're getting the conversations right and we're bringing on the right guests. So thank you for that. Let me express how honored we are to be rated the number one CPG podcast now 2 years in a row, according to FeedSpot, the leading podcast ranking authority in the US. And we are pleased to have us join us in the top 30 as sistercast. CPG Scoop, CPGGUYS Fast Forward, and the FMCG guys.
Who hosts CPG Fast Forward? CPGGUYS Fast Forward. Who is
Brian
that?
Gildenberg. Is he the other CPG guy?
He's the third leg on our stool,
there you
so
go.
to speak.
We're happy to be formal sponsors. Well, before I get there, how does it feel to be number one 2 years in a row?
I don't know. It's kind of like, it's great, and I've kind of grown to be accustomed to it. I'm glad to see some of our sister casts on. I'm also really excited that this year we actually made number 38 on Chartable's list of top marketing podcasts, which is a much broader category. I mean, the fact that we're in the top 50, that's kind of crazy.
Legends in our own minds.
We are legend. We are that at times.
Keyword in our own minds. We're happy to be formal sponsors of Next Up, whose mission it is to advance all women in business. Sri had, of course, appeared on stage at Next Up's Executive Forum back in Austin, Texas, and also at the Next Up Summit in Chicago.
I heard that was a big event. It was like sold out.
1,600 people.
1,600 people. Seemed like a lot of fun and a lot of great bonding.
I got to give credit to Lisa Baird, the new CEO, who actually 6 months into the job was able to attract an audience and deliver for them of that scale.
Just such a great leadership on her part. So much coming out of Next Up. Can't wait to see what she's got planned for 2024,
man.
Yep.
And will the CPG guys continue to be allies?
Of course we are.
There we go. 2024?
Yeah, I think well beyond that.
Next up, folks, here we are. The man has said it himself. Links to, of course, our podcast, our sistercast, and our landing page on Next Up will be found
and the Raj daughters. They're also in there.
Oh yeah, of course. You can get both the links to my daughter's music, Ria, as well as what's going on with Laura.
Vote for Laura's Dream Academy competition.
That's right. At the time of the release of this episode, Laura's journey to be in the next global girls band by Geffen Records will be public until the last round.
I think our dream of being K-pop sensation Sri is come and gone. Let's hope that the next generation can cover it.
The only pop that I'm close to is soda.
Yeah, I like that one.
Used to be sparkling wine once upon a time, but now it's gone.
Now we're teetotalers, aren't we?
No more alcohol, so what to do? So let's get enough of all that, Peter. Let's get to the main event.
Let's do that.
So today's discussion actually is not about soda pop. It's all about mobile strategy and where it stands today. Of course, a lot has changed in the past 3 years. There's been cookie deprecation, screen time surging to an all-time high with consumers. Heck, there's even a new iPhone that came by after a while.
Is this like iPhone 38?
15.
What model are they? 15? Is that the model number?
I want to get the Max Pro. I haven't had time to order a new iPhone, man. It's like so annoying. new DSPs in the mix, a whole bunch of them. Retail media is all over the place. Private label is research. Audience,
That's a big deal.
As a result, audiences have changed all over the place, and they're converging on one thing.
Right.
All of them coming back on how consumer engagement is derived. I have no doubt in my mind, mobile, digital is one of the biggest forms of
We're all
engagement.
carrying around these smart devices in our pockets everywhere we go. It is almost an extension of us at this point.
And the guest for today, no surprise that we have Kunal Nagpal, Chief Business Officer at InMobi. Kunal Nagpal serves as Chief Business Officer, of course, at InMobi, responsible for global business strategy, product management, enterprise partnerships, and client success on the sell side. Prior to that, he was SVP and GM of InMobi Exchange and Meson, where he managed InMobi's sell side business end to end. InMobi Exchange is a marketplace for buying and selling ads across apps that work with InMobi and Meson, a true publisher-first mediation platform, which was launched back in 2022. Definitely at the right time, given where we were with mobile engagement in the future. Under Nagpal's leadership, InMobi Exchange has become the second largest in-app exchange platform in the industry and has seen year-over-year growth of 39% in 2022. Kunal, let me welcome you to the show by saying congratulations. Welcome here on the CPG guys.
Thank you. This is great. I've heard you guys before, and it's definitely an honor to be with you guys on this one.
And we're definitely looking forward to having a good conversation with you today, not just about InMobi, but also, what you do there and how you're driving success for the company. So great to have you join us. As I mentioned, I believe you share exciting things about the state of mobile in our industry. And what better timing? But before we get to the questions we've prepared, can you take a second and share with our audience a brief overview of what InMobi does and your role there?
Yeah. InMobi, is one of those companies that wields little with its name, except sort of give you a hint of what it is, right? The name InMobi itself came from the extremely clear focus on mobile, right? So InMobi is how we sort of started off and said, 16 years ago, the world has to move to mobile. And a year later, we said, the world has to fix itself on how apps will develop and how people's behavior towards those apps will change, right? I mean, hindsight is 2020, but it was quite a bit of a bold statement back then to make in 2008 and say, the world is going towards apps, get on with it, or you'll be left behind. And in that period, we've evolved a couple of times as the business sort of adapted to what the needs are of the advertisers as well as the app developers. And now we have broadly two large businesses. One is sort of your B2B side platform, which is all about ads. There's a DSP in there, there's an SSP in there, there's the exchange that sort of straddles both of those relationships. And then we have a B2C platform by the name of Glance that's been Asia out but rapidly expanding. And that's all about letting developers come onto almost like a lock screen operating system that we sort of built with OEMs and Google, and how they can bring their content and surface it right up there on the device. It's sort of a precursor to how Apple last year said, we will let you guys now see information as widgets. Like Glance is like way beyond widgets, like full on content, and it's all environments built in there. So sort of, we now cover both sides of the story of mobile devices. My role over there is on the ad side, where I run the sell side business, so InMobi Exchange, and the ad server or mediation side, analogous to the freewheels of the world and magnates of the world, sort of companies who are sort of publicly listed out there as well. And yeah, like you said, I run from product to partnerships to strategy, and we are a global company.
Thank you for that, Kunal. We'll of course include links to your LinkedIn profile, the company's LinkedIn page, and the corporate site in the digital liner notes of the podcast episode, so that the 90+% of people listening to this episode on their mobile devices can do so easily as they listen. And so before I kick off the first question, I also remind the audience that this is the second such engagement we're having at InMobi. We did a LinkedIn Live a while back, and you can find the actual...
We're gonna have a link to that episode, the LinkedIn with Jeff Williams, in the digital liner notes of this episode, so they can go back and see that.
So let's get into the question answer section of this episode, Kunal, and I'll kick it off with the first one and then turn it over to Peter for the second one. So let's go, obviously, of everything I've kind of summarized. A lot has changed in mobile. It is the primary way to engage consumers. What are those main mobile market trends that you're watching, and what are some emerging technologies people should be looking at that you are monitoring or actually investing in?
It's probably like 7 questions in there, to be honest. The way the industry has been evolving, I'll try and give it a fair shake. So let's start with the market trends. I think, like you said also briefly earlier, the consumption of media, especially on mobile, just exploded right around the time when everybody hunkered down back in Q2 of 2020 with the pandemic raging and we not knowing what else to do. And to some extent, that was a bit of a secular shift. Like people substantially shifted towards being okay with spending more time digitally than, in the quote unquote real world. Some of those habits have stuck around. You can expect some things to go back to the quote unquote normal, but some things have just stuck. It's a habit. I now spend way more time on door delivery of food and groceries than I used to before. Is it a function of anything else other than pandemic? I struggle to answer that, but what I know is that I'm not the only one. Everybody sort of slowly shifted over there. The pandemic was a big yoke, and then, some got reset, but more or less not really. That's sort of one, right? You're just spending more time on your device. The second is everybody talks about, hey, the cookies are going away and the cookies are going away. That's great. Yes, cookies are going away. At some point, they'll go away. But the world of mobile apps, meanwhile, actually ran ahead of that. So while the world was worried about falling off the cliff of whatever their fear scenario is, in the mobile apps world, Apple already sort of took the first step 3 or 4 years ago and said, you know what? The device identifier really shouldn't be guaranteed to anybody seeing that to respond to an ad. And so they said, well, it'll be an opt-in. It's a continuation from Apple from the time when they shut off Safari access on the cookie side and IP side. But on the app side, Apple is actually the more dominant platform. So when they do that on the app side, you better adapt to it right away, right? In the browser world, people are like, oh yeah, fine, too bad. We still got 70% of the market with the Chrome browser that we can work with. In this case, the ratios are almost flipped when it comes to long-term value. And so they did that. That was a big shift. And now Google is onto that. So Google ID is actually also going to go away at some point. Both of those things mean the entire industry is not just staring at, hey, how's the browser world changing? It's like, oh my God, how is our entire omni-channel experience going to change? As a consumer, you're definitely feeling that I'm going to be more protected. My PII is not going to be abused with, harvest and then resold a million times. But on the advertiser side, your life just got so much harder. You're struggling to now target people. When you do find a way to target people, you struggle to measure the effectiveness of your campaign. When you can find a proxy for that, you still struggle to find the attribution. Who helped you get that measurement, right, of that campaign? So I think it's that perfect storm in some sense that is now being pushed by the mobile market for a change. Earlier, everything used to happen later in the mobile market because it was considered the smaller world. But now it's the dominant world. It's a dominant consumption area. It's a dominant revenue area for most companies. And so now the power equation has flipped. So as the mobile world changes, the advertising world changes. That's sort of broadly how the trends are shifting. More consumption, but much harder to work with that higher consumption. So sort of like double whammy. You sort of expect a lot more returns, except you struggle to find that return. On the question of like emerging technologies, I think this one thing where the identifiers are going away, as we call it, the currency is being yanked away. A lot of effort is now being put in, whether it is, hey, the importance of first-party data has not diminished. If anything, you now want it even more. The question is, how do you deploy it? So now you have a whole host of companies focusing on that and building clean rooms. Right? There's literally companies that are raising funds on just being a clean room environment where the first-party data of an advertiser, the first-party data of an app developer, the first-party data that you might get from some other aggregator is brought in, and the data never goes away anywhere. You just mix it, match it, use it, delete it, right? So that's clean rooms are one technology that are are one challenge that is sort of rapidly rising in the ranks of what should I care about. And while they're doing that, the world is also quickly thinking, well, if everybody started using clean rooms, that just seems like more hops, potentially more strained economics, because now everybody's paying for a whole new vendor system, a whole new class of subscriptions that we didn't plan for. So what else can we do around it? And that is the area that we are honestly quite keen on, to figure out how can we help close some of these exchange of information of a user with the need of an advertiser on the client side. How can we bring that safety of the environment for an advertiser to come onto the device, onto the mobile phone itself, and not be on the server side necessarily? When you do that, you take care of the privacy, you take care of the trust of the app developer. You also make it easier, cheaper, faster for the advertiser to get to those users. It's a very complicated world. The closest analogy probably is when Google talks about topics on its side, but there's a lot more to be done, and that's where we are actively spending our resources on.
Thank you for that. And Kunal, welcome to the podcast. It's really great to speak with you today. So let's get to the secret sauce, shall we? I'd love to hear from you how InMobi differentiates itself from the competition in this mobile advertising space, and why should brands be paying attention to the mousetrap that you've built?
To be quite honest, I think we're trying to be different by sticking to our core principles. And those core principles are not, too many. They're quite simply the following. Number one, who are we here for? We are here to help the advertisers get the right performance for the money they are spending. Let's stick to that. As long as we can stick to that, we are going to remove any biases, whether it's a technology bias or a human bias, in preventing that, right? Second, we started off our journey by saying we will not be a data harvester of users. Users deserve to not be violated in that basic trust of how we work with them. We've stuck to that. We will stick to it. And I think that's being recognized over time as, unfortunately, as a differentiator in our head. Why is anybody else doing anything different? This is ridiculous. But there are enough economic incentives to do a whole host of things. I'm happy to take less growth, but we do not want to violate that trust of the user. And the last one is quite simply, advertisement works best, not just when those points 1 and 2 happen, but when you can create like a cliche, a magical moment where somebody actually inspired to interact with an ad. So our focus remains on how can I get the best ad creative out there to the consumer in the moment that they care about it. In a way, it means nothing, but in a way, it means everything. And if you just stick to that, you're always trying to do better. The world is adapting around us. The world is changing around us. And if we can adapt, we can make sure that we were talking about iPhone 15 being launched a few weeks ago. Back in the day when iPhone was launched, you compare the two phones, if somebody even has that original device, the performance, the expectation is dramatically different. It's like a lifetime ago. So if you don't adapt, you don't succeed, right? And we've been very good at not just adapting ourselves, but generally running a little bit of a step ahead.
Still feels like yesterday, but it's been 15 years since the iPhone was put out there in 2008 as a smartphone.
Yeah.
I remember queuing up to get one, and it's amazing how to the day people still queue up to get one. But thank you for the 1, 2, 3 approach that you just gave. So how do you actually approach customer acquisition and retention in this dynamic and competitive mobile first engagement industry that you're part of?
I think increasingly, I wouldn't say we are all the way there, and I definitely wouldn't say we are done in our mission to do this, but increasingly, we've gotten into a consultative relationship with our clients. On the InMobi Exchange side, our clients are the advertisers. On the SSP side, the customers are the app developers. And recognizing the fact that they are facing multiple challenges at the same time, and there is just so much noise in the industry. Anybody and everybody will raise a hand to say, I can help you in this, this, and this, and this, just by simple arithmetic, you add up all of those, I can help you this and then this. If you are a large advertiser, you're going to probably hear like 17,000 propositions in a year. It's bonkers. And we are trying to say to them, hey, look, I'm not saying work with me. I'm not even saying I know all the answers, but I want to help. And I want to help by solving for the problems that you care about today. Not, let me help you solve for the world 3 years from now. We will get to it when we'll get to it. Let's solve for the problems now because everybody is struggling. Same thing is true for the app developers. App developers, again, sort of the same example, right? Sort of going back to '08, right? If you remember, one of the ways the iPhone was revolutionary back then was in it, how it allowed for third-party app developers to come onto the Apple App Store. And that allowed for people to be discovered and build whole new businesses around it. Today, that app store is so crowded. You have millions of apps. You are trying to get your app to be seen, discovered, downloaded, retained on the user's device in a much more competitive environment. How can we help you do that? How can we help you monetize better? How can we help you maintain your app better? All of those are conversations that take a long consultation. It's a much longer BD exercise, but at least we're going to be doing it with full trust. And I think that's where we're starting to separate ourselves from a lot of our competition.
So you talked earlier about the cookieless future, the fact that this is being driven primarily by the big platforms, both Apple first through Safari and then through the apps, forcing everybody to opt in rather than opt out. And obviously on the browser side with what Google's doing in Chrome. So that really all just circles around this concept of data privacy and security. So can you share with us and our audience how InMobi addresses these issues through, you mentioned taking it off of the server side and moving it right onto the device in light of all of these growing and evolving regulations, be it GDPR, CCPA, or any of the other acronyms that are popping up as government organizations get involved in trying to regulate?
Yeah, to be honest, it's like a 1, 2, 3 approach that we are trying to build and educate the industry around us to think more deeply. We're not expecting everybody to adopt the same ideology, but to be able to at least think that way. The first of those 3 is you should decide if you are safer on the server side or the client side. We think the client side is a better environment, but I'm nobody to tell everybody else you should do exactly the same. If you think you can do better on the server side, keep the interest of the users and safeguard their information, by all means go for it. But take a call. You can't sort of be, ambivalent about it. And that's sort of one. The second is, now that you've decided you want to be on one side or the other, great. How will you help the user's consent to use their PII for the purpose of advertisement be exposed? Are you going to take the consent, in a bit of a, I want to say wink, wink way? Or are you going to take consent in a very legitimate, matter of fact way? Again, I'm not here to interpret the law to say what works, what does not work. What should you do or not? It's between your business philosophy and your risk appetite with the regulation. But let's be honest here. You need to take consent. That should be the bottom line. That should be the baseline for a conversation. So take consent, right? And we've recently announced that we acquired a consent management platform to be able to do that well, not just internally for us, but for the world outside, right? So that's sort of 2. 3 is, now that you have taken consent, you're getting PII and you're getting some association of that user, whether it's a hashed email or it's a hashed phone number. How will you help them convert that into some sort of a currency? There are obviously a lot of companies who will say, hey, we want to steer completely away from that and we'll only have a contextual business. Perfectly fine. But that's not the only answer that advertisers need. Advertisers have server farms full of CRM data. How do they use that? They have first-party data that they know is valuable because when they use it, they get much better performance on their marketing dollars. How do I bring that into the picture? For me to bring that into picture, I have to connect it through something. That new something could be hashed email or hashed phone number. And so you need to now go from server side or client side, build your governance, take consent, use the hashed email and hashed phone numbers in a way that you're going to promise and be able to retain that promise, that everybody from the advertiser down to the user can use that one common currency, if you will.
You know, Kunal, I was just making a note here with Peter that you're taking what I would call is a much more complex topic based on who InMobi is and really digesting it into easily stimulatable, understandable nuggets for our listeners. So I really appreciate that. Let me remind our audience that we're speaking to Kunal Nagpal, Chief Business Officer at InMobi. So on the token of what I just said, you are an app-focused company and perhaps to our research, at least one of the only ones at the scale that we're discussing today and the reach as well, to work with such a diverse set of advertisers. So is that whole model an opportunistic play executed well, or is this some sort of a strategic advantage you have landed on?
If you ask the founders of InMobi, who are still very, very heavily involved with the company, I think they will likely say that it was not a fluke of nature that they came upon this and said, we should focus only on apps, right? You had to really be oblivious to the power of apps once smartphone devices came out with app stores that let you recreate the experience from what was then basically only a website world onto your handheld device. Before that, you basically had those OEM built apps that you had in BlackBerry. The BlackBerry calendar was one of the worst possible calendars you could work with, but that was the only option you had, right? If you had now others coming in, you knew there was going to be competition. Competition was always good. And so InMobi caught on to that and said, hey, look, let's focus on that. Now, over time, that has been proven true to be a strategic advantage. No matter how you plan as an advertiser your media plan, you cannot ignore the fact that half of the digital dollars go onto the mobile device. And if you're thinking about the mobile device, every marketer worth their name knows that 70 or 80% of the time consumed on your device is actually on the apps. I still go to, a Safari or a Chrome browser, but my reasons to go on that keep reducing every month at this point. So having focus on the apps, we now have 16-year, let's say, old muscle. We have the DNA to be able to build on that and say, hey, this is our moment now when the media plans are being built around the mobile device. What do we know that nobody else knows? And to be able to parlay that into a business model, I think where that has started to shine as the true differentiator.
I know your founder, Naveen, has won several awards in this space, all the way from being one of the best startups to from the Prime Minister of India directly.
Right.
One thing that I do want to kind of stress to our listeners is you mentioned using Chrome less and less and less. Simple reason for that is mobile is what has overtaken everything. In my own personal life, I think, Peter, you do as well. When we're on the move, like there is no Chrome. It's like Safari. It's the mobile device's default browser. No one even switches that.
I used to just look at our download stats, and that's about it. But no, I mean, I think about even my daughter, Nadia. She would much rather view whatever content she's trying to consume, strangely enough, on that tiny little iPhone screen than she would for me to put it up on Roku on the big screen on the wall. Why? Because she has much more control of it when she has it in the palm of her hand. It amazes me. Like people would rather, I'm like, I want to watch it on the big screen. Nope. I'm not the new generation. They'd much rather watch it on the small screen.
So,
I mean, it comes with the freedom.
Yeah.
You can walk with it.
Yeah.
Kunal, before I turn it over to Peter for the next question, I've got an interesting one for you, right? A lot of mobile consumption these days takes place on the go on an airplane. I won't say a train because trains usually come with a inbuilt Wi-Fi connection. I would say 50% of aircrafts have that too. 50% don't. How do you all approach situations for mobile advertising when there isn't an internet connection? Or is there even such a possibility?
There's a possibility, but to be quite honest, there's not enough of a focus on that side.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
If you think of we look at these stats every day because our SDK is rendering an ad, and I keep checking why is that ad not rendering to the last ad. If I'm sending a billion ads, I want to see a billion ads shown to the device. But obviously, some of them will not be. Some reasons in there. One of them is the user went offline, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know a way to still serve that ad in that offline environment. My struggle is I cannot go back to the advertiser with a straight face and say, I can help you measure the effectiveness of that ad because the ecosystem is not ready to work offline.
Collecting that data on the effectiveness,
you can deliver it, you just can't see how well it performs.
And then we're getting into all kinds of privacy issues, right? Let me turn it over to you, Peter.
All right. So, Kunal, help me understand what your approach is to innovation and product development. What's kind of got your attention right now as you start to think about taking into account those core principles that you outlined so clearly? How are you thinking about approaching innovation product development in this space?
I'll say a few things on that. Number one, I think we've evolved as a company, and now the non-negotiable stance for us is there are at least 5 functions that are involved in any product development. There's obviously the product manager. There's the product manager's counterpart and the engineering manager. There's also the UX designing side of it. There's a product marketing side of it. And then there's the business owner side of it. All of these 5 people are equally held responsible to figure out what is going on in the industry and how each of them will help bring the next incremental improvement in the thing that we are offering. That approach has made everybody own the problem from the very get-go. It's now not just a problem of the business owner to say, hey, my revenue is going up or down. The engineering manager better know how the revenue is going up or down. Otherwise, that will be some hard conversations. But thankfully, we don't have to have that many conversations like that because they're all embracing the idea that we all collectively own innovation. So everybody is always plugged into the industry. Everybody's plugged into their own network of people that they know. What they hear, they bring on to the conversation. And that is where our product development kicks in, where we start with, quite simply, and this is not exactly radical and unique to InMobi, but we start with the user story. What are we trying to solve? For whom? It starts with the voice of the customer, and it ends with, here's how the customer in the end liked it or not. There are going to be metrics in the entire chain of this is what they want. All 5 stakeholders edit live in real time at the same time that user story to bring it truly to life. We build something at rapid pace because now everybody was clear and there was no information arbitrage. But once you've built it, track it, run the alpha, run the beta, go for GA, the metrics go, right? And I think that approach of co-ownership and collaboration from the first moment all the way to when it's launched, I think is helping us really change the way we can now adapt to the market. The market is brutally fast. You cannot survive if you don't adapt to it. And our goal is to go faster. If you want to win, you have to go faster.
No debate, Kunal. The market is brutally dynamic and fast, and one has to adapt. On that angle, one of the hottest adaptations the CPG industry has made over the last couple of years is in the space of app retail media websites. And so InMobi offers on-site full funnel ad experiences, AI-powered solutions, off-site solutions, retail media mediation. So I've learned that those are some of the offerings out there. Give us a color commentary on that and InMobi's outcomes on the retail media side, and who should be contacting you as RMN providers to be in touch.
Like you said, if you're not from the ad tech industry, you might be surprised to see how quickly retail media networks just came into the center of the conversation so quickly. 3 years ago, people wouldn't talk a whole lot. They didn't know Amazon was the largest retail media network in the world. up until time Amazon broke out its advertising dollars, and they're like, wait a minute, Amazon advertising? That's actually retail media dollars. And then everybody just scrambled and said, wait a minute, we also have some of those unique advantages, right? And also you have, I don't know, I've lost count. I stopped counting after 50, how many retail media networks have popped up over the last 2-3 years, right? And for us, we were talking about the strategic advantage earlier about focus on in-app. That's where I think we are now able to have these conversations because we are a global company. We are one of the few companies that also do really well within China, right? And so our goal is for our clients, how do we bring trends from around the world to their attention, right? 2 years ago, when we first kicked off our efforts on retail media, we started off these conversations, very exploratory conversations with some of the names out there. I remember this conversation with one of them, and they said, I want to be able to recreate, that box over there that says recommended listing. And I'm like, of course I do. Do you want to stick to that? Or can I point you to what is about to hit you in maybe 18 months from now? And they're like, what is about to hit me? I'm like, well, have you heard of this Chinese company called Temu? It's about to hit you. And they're like, what do you mean? And when you show them that thing, 2 years ago, they didn't know what it was. I think a lot of people still don't understand fully the power of that. But here is an e-commerce player that is digitally native, that exists only on your device. They don't think about, should I have a URL? Should I have a website? Who cares? This is built for the world. We were just talking earlier about, your daughter, Peter, like if she lives on the device, she wants to have that experience of e-commerce on that device.
And Kunal, her father lives on Temu buying her all sorts of children's clothing that I can only get through their app. So I adopted it very recently, and I am an avid user.
And therein lies the secret, right? You have access to the whole world through an app in a way that it makes it seamless, in a way where you actually don't realize how many of those product listings actually were sponsored, right? So here I am talking to a quote unquote traditional retailer. They want a sponsored listing which says recommended as a small font of certain size, of certain color. I'm like, yeah, but you have no idea what's about to completely disintermediate you. You might be selling, this, I don't know, let's call it like printer ink. I can get it for like a third the price on my device today, right? And so I think these conversations are helping us make them be more aware. And we come from a very different lens than the other quote unquote competition for us in retail media, where they come and say, we will do this, this, and this. I'm like, yeah, but that's just more of the same. The world's changing. How are you getting ready for when the world will stop looking at your website? Is that sponsored listing going to work equally well on your app? I guarantee you not, because your app is not architected to do that. So let's talk about that. Right? I think that's where some of these conversations are happening. And if you're any forward-looking retailer, actually forget forward-looking. If you're a retailer who knows your margins are under stress and you need to think faster, you have to stop thinking the traditional way.
I love that. Okay, so our last question in this conversation, Kunal, is really a different take on retail media networks. Are they then based upon kind of, as you described, this evolution into the native app kind of development of the experience? Does that mean that retail media networks are kind of like a high ROI sandbox with the open programmatic ecosystem, or are they just a version of a walled garden that interplays well within the open ecosystem? Like, where do they sit, and where do you think that's going?
I may have a contrarian view on this, to be honest. I think most retail media networks today want to be some version of a walled garden that has some sort of an interplay with the open ecosystem. And I say that because the advertisers come to the retailers on the promise that there is an invaluable exchange of first-party data on both sides. And for them to be able to do that, the retailers are saying, I alone can give you the performance that you need and drive what is likely the closest link from your advertisement to the purchase. Because I can do that, here is my measurement, methodology. Here is my attribution system, which usually is self-attribution. And here is how I want you to think about the ad experience, because it's my users, it's my experience on that. And that's all fine. But I think somewhere in that got lost the even more fundamental point, which is this was meant to be an interchange of first-party data, not necessarily creating new boundaries in the ecosystem. The more boundaries you create, the harder it is for the advertisers to spend money on you, to then say, hey, I just spent money on retailer X. Now I have Y, Z, A, B, and C, 6 retailers. What did I just do to my life? Now I have like 6 consoles to look at, pull in reports, everybody's different attribution, different measurement. Did my money even go to the right place? Because everybody's claiming they drove, sales for me, except, wait a minute, if I look for 1 year ago, this seems like I drove the sales that I drove last year. So like, what am I doing here? Like, I just spent a lot of money. Nobody's thinking of the advertiser in this, unfortunately, which is fine because that's the incentive of the corporate. You're here to build a business as a fiduciary duty to your investors. I think it's time to balance that a little bit. If you can't serve the advertiser, this business model can't last.
Powerful words to end with. Let me remind the audience that you can find all of our content on the URL cpgguys.com. And of course, if you think your company has some thought leadership to contribute to our community discussions, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Again, that email is contact@cpgguys.com. And maybe you can join us on this podcast just like Kunal did. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com on the navigation bar at top. And we can't thank you enough for the 25,000 plus followers we have on LinkedIn. We know that number is huge. The show doesn't exist without you. So sincerely, from the bottom of our heart, from Peter, me, and Brian Gildenberg, thank you to all our followers. Kunal, it was a pleasure talking mobile with you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the recording.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Peter, we have a few minutes here for a quick summary from you. So why don't we hit that up?
My head's still spinning because Kunal opened my mind up to a whole lot of concepts. Some things that I was familiar with, but others that I really hadn't connected the dots. I mean, clearly, the advent of the smartphone in 2008 brought app. It's so funny. We think about it before 2008, and everything was about this open experience driven by Firefox and Netscape and Chrome and Edge and all the other versions of browsers. And then things changed, and that necessitated some different types of approaches to how advertising would be conducted. And as privacy issues started to arise, the world had to adjust very quickly. Apps faster than certainly open because of the decisions that Apple made around it. So the cookieless future and the mobile app opt-in necessitated a different approach. And I think that what InMobi's done around creating a really powerful technology platform that is also predicated on some values, the fact that they want to, number one, make sure that their clients are building governance, that after they've built governance, that they are taking consent, right? And once they've taken consent, then you can figure out how you can monetize and profit off of all that. I think that's a really great thing. And that their core principles of one, they're here to help advertisers perform, removing the bias, that they will not harvest the data. I think that sets them apart from a lot of players in this space. And that advertising works best when you can create an inspirational moment during an ad exposure. If they focus on that, clients will want to work with them because they really are focused at the heart of what the client has done. And that the decision to focus on their platform on the app as the primary mechanism for delivering advertising was truly not a fluke. But as I described earlier, understanding the evolution of us moving into that mobile environment, that we use apps to do it, that the example I gave of my daughter using so many of the apps to consume content, and that's how she prefers to do it. I think that's really great. I also love the fact that when they talk about building innovation, that there are some non-negotiable functions, that there are four archetypes within their business, from the business owner to the CX owner and in between, that they all have a stake in the game, that they're all responsible, and the journey is what matters from the very beginning, right? from the minute they start with the voice of the customer, what is the customer looking for, to at the end of the day when the enhancement is developed, is the customer satisfied with it? That is what is going to drive the value of the company and their long-term growth potential. So I love the conversation, the great example you used around Temu. I'm an avid user of Temu, and I use it for buying my daughter clothing, but I increasingly use it for buying just about anything when you start seeing some of the prices there. Now I've cut out the middleman of the marketplace. It's just really fascinating. And I had no idea that so much of that was sponsored advertising. It really is quite fascinating. There's a paradigm shift happening in the advertising model. While we're talking about the incredible growth of retail media networks, let's not forget that the in-app experience is increasingly driving the attention of the next generation. And that's where, smartly enough, InMobi has placed its focus for growth and innovation. So those are my thoughts, Sri.
How did you do, Kunal?
I think it went well. I love the fact that you guys got sort of, fine tune and adapt the questions to the previous one. So I think it went great.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us today. Peter, thank you so much as always for joining me today. That's a wrap of this episode. And we will see you soon on another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.